Welcome back YouTube. We're going to go through a glute session. So I don't know, a pro level glutes-ish glute session. I'm going to be taking Magda through a session today. Magda is my client and Cuba's client, straight together. She also coaches for us as part of Team MK. She coaches lifestyle, first-time competitors, and also helps me with the Empower program, which is our 12-week transformation journey. So obviously the session's a bit of CPD for her, but also because she's coming out of a diet now, the focus on trying to improve and progress and just to nail down on making sure form's good. Being a bikini competitor, glutes are the goal. So if we can go through a glute session, make sure that we can get as much out of it as possible for her. It'll be a great thing for her to take into her training to be able to make lots of progress, but also it's going to be a great way for you guys to be able to learn some tips and tricks with your glute training for you to optimize yours, make it better, competitor or not, put it into your training and you'll get even more out of it. First exercise for Magda is going to be, you can just do a wall up, it's fine, is going to be glute kickbacks. The reason that we're starting with glute kickbacks is because Magda has great connection with her glutes, but it could always be better, and she sometimes gives the feedback that she doesn't have the best of connection. So we're going to start with something that is more of an isolation movement. Get that little bit of, I'm not going to say pump, I'm not doing it, but we are going to say it. Just get a little bit of blood flow in that area, because then once you've started and you've initiated that feeling, being able to then apply it into your actual compound lifts, which we'll move on to next, is far better. For me personally, because my glute connection is absolutely dog, I have to take my activation even more serious than someone like Magda, because I simply, like some people can just sit there and think about it and can feel it. I mean, in the background, as you can see here, Chloe's got a fantastic bottom, and she could probably just think about it without even doing anything, just that connection that you can get with your glutes. I can't get that. I can think about it with my lats, I can think about it with my upper back, I can think about it with my quads, I can think about it with my shoulders, but like that connection, there's some kind of wires crossed in my brain with that one. So I have to take my activation stuff quite seriously. So if you see me before my session doing hyperextensions, glute extensions, glute press throughs, abductions, things like that, I'm not saying that I do all of them. I choose 2 lifts and make sure that they're right, slow, controlled, etc. If you see me doing that, that is the reason why, because I have to take it even more seriously. The word's not seriously because obviously Mag takes it seriously, but I have to think about it and get things going first before my sets, before my compound lifts, because if I didn't, my sets are wasted for me personally. So if you do struggle with a specific area, start with some activation stuff first, and it'll really help you get that mind focused on it so that when you get into your working sets, you're really ready to go. Right, so normal glute kickbacks, always get yourself a hard body cup. Use code MEG at checkout if you've not already got them. Seriously though, I usually use the smaller ones because they do attach around the ankle a little bit better, but I don't have my training bag with me. Rookie error. So we have got the bigger cup. Because I've got these big flares on, it kind of doesn't matter anyway. When it comes to a normal glute kickback on the cables, because there's lots of different varieties and we'll talk about that in a second, you can use yourself a little wedge block like we've got here, because if you think about it, the best thing that you can do when it comes to a glute kickback is keep your hips neutral. If you arch your lower back, if you twist your hips, you take tension off your glute. If you're someone who struggles with glute tension anyway, if you have that moving, it's going to take tension off. I mean, if you're someone who doesn't struggle with glute tension, a little bit of movement might not be bad, but essentially if you can keep it neutral, you're going to get the most out of it. So if you can keep your hips neutral by allowing yourself more room with the floor, having a little block will help you a lot. Everybody's different in regards to their chest position as to what's going to feel better. For me, not keeping my chest completely over, but almost like a 45 degree, is that about right? 45 degree angle. Keeps me in a great space. Then I think about keeping my legs slightly bent. It's not totally straight, otherwise I feel like I take a lot of tension into my hammy. Not that I do, but just it feels that way, or a bit of tension into the back of my knee. So I keep a soft knee, I keep my hips under, I keep my tummy nice and tight, and then I drive my foot as far back as I can go without my hips moving. So my hips stay almost, it's not tucked, but my spine is just straight rather than arched. And then I only take my foot as far as I can go without it arching. Like essentially if I'm going like this, I just don't have any tension in my glute at all. It just feels all lower back. So hips under, core tight, fully stretch, fully extend, all the tension in your glutes. Bosh. Magda's going to do her working sets now. Perfect. You can be a tiny little bit more aggressive as you drive back. That's better. That's nice. You can see the nice pump that you're getting into your glute there. Lovely. Good. Kick back a little bit harder. That's better. That moved easier. Perfect. Lovely. We knew that a normal glute kickback is going to use the majority of just, I love how I'm actually grabbing my bum right now, your glute max, so your biggest, meatiest part of your bottom. You can obviously do a glute kickback that's going to attack, get more work through your upper glute, so we call this the glute med. The other movement that's very direct in that area is an abduction, so the one where you sit on the machine and you drive it out. You can use the cable and do an abduction on it, but I do think it's a little bit limited. I don't think it's the best movement. You can use a machine, excellent. If not, honestly just do a glute med kickback, and I'm going to show you how to do one of those now. If you can put loads of weight on it, you're definitely doing it wrong. So glute med kickback, you stand more side onto the cable. Your working side's leg will drive in front of your non-working leg, and then you'll literally just drive out. You see a lot of people just doing it like normal and trying to kick out to the side, which might work to a certain degree, but it's only so that they can put a little bit of weight on it compared to doing it like this. You will get more work through the glute med if you can simply just think leg out. Very similar to the normal glute kickback. My hips aren't really moving, my range of motion isn't huge. I have a solid pause at the bottom and at the top to stop any momentum. It's an isolation movement, it's not a compound, so we don't want the whole body to get involved. And the movement is just simply as simple as that. You can face side on and you can drive back and out a little bit, but again, you get more work through just that meaty portion of your glute med if you can just stand side on. I find that it gets me a little bit more in my glute max. Yeah, rather than into my glute med. Because if you think about it, you go out, which is all glute, back, which is all glute max. And then you come out, which is glute med. Whereas if you actually bring it to the side, the only thing that's working is just there. Okay. For you, Magda, you know your non-working leg? Yeah. I'd just pull that box a little bit further. feel it in the top? Okay, perfect. That's where we want it. Keep your head up. Tighten your tummy a little bit more. There we go. So you want head, mid-back, lower back, bum, all nice and straight. Because if you think about it, when you do any of your lifts, you're going to have that's the position that you want. So this is the position that we want to feel now so that we can emulate that in our sessions. So the reason that we do plank holds, and not everyone needs to do them. Some people, you know, like I don't feel like I need to do them before every session because I know the feeling, I know the position that I need to have. So I'll likely just do different forms of abs if I'm trying to train my actual abs. But it's a great little thing to implement before your actual training. If you struggle to keep your spine straight, if you struggle to be able to brace effectively, and if you struggle with midsection control, Magda has a little bit less aggression sometimes in her sets, and sometimes struggles to keep her positioning in terms of her posture really good. So for her, you can stop there. For her, doing something before her session that reminds me of neutral spine, good posture, keeping my core tight like I'm going to have when I try and create that aggression at the hardest point of my lift, it's a great little tool for her to utilise. So I'm not saying that it's going to help her glute tension, however, it will help her better brace, which means that she'll use more load, get more reps, which over time, more strength, better form will equal more muscularity, and that for her is in her glutes.
I was joking to Gaz, I had a PT session with Cuba.
Yeah.
He was like, you need to do planks. I was like, sure, I'll do planks. I know I'm a bit wobbly sometimes.
You are a little bit wobbly, yeah, but
so
you've got like the smallest feet ever, and you've got very long legs, so, and you were born like this, so. But that doesn't give us an excuse, it just gives us a reason to do things harder. Right, we're going to move on to hip thrust. This is going to be the first real exercise because, I mean, a glute kickback's not really a real exercise, is it? It's just an isolation lift. Take from that what you will, I do them, but it's just an isolation lift. It's a great thing to start with, get that connection, get into a proper set like a glute hip thrust allows for. Here, you don't have a lot of movements. In fact, I would go as far as to say this is likely the only movement that you have where load, so the weight of the machine, the bar, whatever, however you're doing a hip thrust, is at that squeeze portion of the rep when it comes to the hip thrust. So getting your glutes short and having that load on it, this is probably one of the only movements really that you can have that. Abduction, yes, but this is the only compound really that you get that with, in my opinion. So we're going to make the most of it. The reason that I got Magda to do the hip thrust, not the hip thrust, the plank prior to her actual sets is because she really struggles with being aggressive, whether that be at the bottom of a set on a split squat, at the bottom of a rep on a RDL, leg press, hip thrust. We want more aggression. More aggression for her is going to equal better strength. She has great form, but if we can create more aggression, more strength is going to equal more mass. So that is going to be our huge focus this time in off season, now that we've pretty much got form totally nailed to a certain degree on most lifts. So we've definitely got some things that we need to work through on this one though. If we want to keep your feet, hips and knees totally in line, some people can get away with a little bit of a wider stance, but for the most part, most people are going to be better off when it comes to a shoulder width stance. Magda's not going to let her knees roll out when she comes down and up. If you let your knees splay out, you take tension off your glutes. I'm not saying that it's completely off, but it will come off to a certain degree. You want to keep as much on. So keeping them nice and neutral is going to be fantastic. We only want the tippies of the shoulders on the bench. If you have more back on the bench, you can create more momentum. More momentum equals less tension on the muscle that you're trying to work, which will mean less ability to grow over time. I'm not saying that it's going to completely void tension or stop muscularity gains, but if we can take out the majority of momentum, it's going to allow us to be able to keep more tension on. The active range of motion for the glute would be about 30 seconds in terms of drop, keeping the spine nice and neutral, holding at the bottom, and then being aggressive on the way through. You tend to find that a lot of people do a hip thrust and they'll stop there with like their hips not totally extended through. You want to drive through, and that still keeping the back straight, keeping the core nice and tight, emulating that position that you've just had on the hip thrust with straight squeeze. Awesome. Massive glutes. I want you to be a bit more aggressive. When you get to the bottom, it's like you want to go and then you just don't go. It's like you're disconnected. So your brain goes, oh yeah, I want to go, but then these almost just go, yeah. Whereas we want to try and stop that. And it's the same, I watch it on leg press, I watch it on your split squats, and I see on your split squats, you go like this, and then you just lose the tension in your tummy. But we need to create that aggression. So that position that you've just done on your plank, and that was so solid. If you can create that right at the bottom of your lift, and really think about thrusting through the ceiling as hard as possible, you're going to be able to move that with ease and build strength way better. Okay? Aggression, now that we've got form nailed, because you pretty much have, if we can get you stronger, the amount of muscularity that you're going to build in the right areas because of the form and exercise selection is going to be crazy, because form's there. But if we can create more aggression, it'll mean more load, which will mean more mass. Now that you've got the form right, 100% you can afford to try and generate a little bit more aggression. There's a difference between momentum and power, and if we can get that balance right, it's going to be great. And if you find that one of your reps goes a little bit funny, that's fine. Next time you keep a note of it, you go, right, next time I'll aim to get that same weight, aim to get the same reps, but tidy up that last one, and that's going to be another form of progression. So if there's a slight little discrepancy in your form, just because you're trying to now create that aggression, it's fine. You can always reset it the next session, or go with the same weight and aim to try and keep everything solid, still keeping the aggression there. But it's time to start learning that so we can take steps forwards. A little bit too low. So if you watch my hip thrust back, I've stripped it back a little bit so that I can get that nice little bit of real roll through at the top. So imagine when you're on the floor and you're doing actual glute bridge, and that feeling that you get where you're almost like necks in and hips are all the way through. That's the feeling that you want at the top of this. You'll get a really nice bit of squeeze. How did that feel? Do you want more weight?
Could probably go a little bit heavier.
Tense. People are a little bit afraid to fail. Failure is the lesson. Failure is where you'll make most growth, progress, everything. It's an uncomfortable feeling, but in order to take things forwards in anything in life, you have to fail at certain points. So in any lift that you do when it comes to training, there is always a safe way to fail. It's like when you're on the hip thrust on the Smith. For me personally, I would always ask someone to spot, but it's so easy to just re-rack it on. So easy. If you get to the bottom and you can't drive it back up, you can just flick it back on. You do a shoulder press and you're doing it with the dumbbells, and you literally can't get any further up than here, you just drop it. There's no point in trying to drive it up, because that's just going to take away from that next session if you try to one arm up, the next arm up. If you get to that point and you literally just hit a sticking point, let them go, it's fine. Don't be afraid to fail, don't be afraid to push your weight, don't be afraid to drive your sets, because that's how you're going to create more muscle growth. I see so many people just do sets and I just think, wow, that was like a warm-up, like you're going so slow, or you just, that last rep just looked like your absolute first rep. And I'm not saying that they're going to look, or they shouldn't look too different in terms of form, but they should be hard, they should be gnarly, you should be shaking. And if you're not taking your sets hard enough, and you need to train harder.
You need to have your own write that down.
I know Jace just said,
Note it down.
I know.
Meg said it first.
What Meg said. WMS. That's like what Michaela does though, isn't it, on her thing. I'm going to take it from Michaela Aycock.
Why not?
She'll be happy about
I don't
it,
think
it's
she'll
fine.
mind.
No, she'll say just take it, it's fine. So we'll call it what Meg said.
Could you tell me when to stop?
Of course I can. I'll actually even just poke your bum. I'll hold this as well. Stop. There. But actually pause. Stop. Drive through. That's better. Pause. Drive through. Pause at the bottom. Pause. Drive through. Squeeze. Good. Pause. Drive through. Good. Keep them knees in. Pause. Drive through. Good. And again. Drive. And again. Good. Drive. Let's go, come on. Losing that range a little bit at the top. Let's go, come on, all the way, all the way. And again. Drive. Nice. Drive. Drive. One more, let's go. Through. All the way, all the way. Nice, leave it there. That was good. Yeah, you actually personally could do with having your feet a little bit wider, because you are very narrow, yes, but I think that it's making you feel a little bit unstable. So I reckon taking your feet a little bit wider would be a benefit for you. I have my feet just on the outside of hip width rather than inside. Yeah. Hey guys, so I thought I'd just say I am an online coach. I do get asked often if I am. I coach people from lifestyle base all the way up to competitive pro level. The level of service that you'll get, regardless of what level you are, will not falter, will not change. Whatever your goal is, I am here to support you. Lifestyle up to professional bodybuilder. Please inquire via my Linktree so that we can start the coaching process together. So you've just done a movement. Yes, you are going to challenge the glutes in the stretch, but you are going to challenge the glutes really harshly in the squeeze on a hip thrust, on a RDL. I'm not saying that it's just a total glute movement. Yes, you are going to get some erector work. Yes, you are going to get some adductor work. Yes, you are going to get a little bit of hamstring work, but you are going to get a lot of glute as well. And it's going to be the majority of that challenge when you are in the stretch, so when you bend down. We create a little bit of extra challenge into the squeeze on the glutes, so the drive through on the glutes, by adding a band. If you're a newbie to training or a newbie to bodybuilding, you likely don't need to add the band just yet, because an RDL is a hard movement to nail, and I do think that you have to build good strength, nail the basics first before you start getting super fancy. These types of things can come in years into your actual training when it brings benefit to it, because you've already taken everything that you possibly could out of that movement initially anyway. So you always want to make sure, if you are using the band, that it's at hip width. If it's lower or if it's higher, the actual pull that it will create will be a little bit less on your glutes and a little bit more into, for me, when it's like really low and I try to drive, like I just feel like there's a lot of tension like into my hamstring. I'm not saying there is, but it just doesn't feel like it's creating resistance where it needs to, which is onto the glutes. If it's too high, I just feel like I get a real big pump into my lower back. Whereas if it's just right and right at hip width and you drive your hips through to it, the amount of squeeze that you can get on your glutes is very nice. An RDL is just nice and simple. You want to think about keeping your, I've not got the dumbbells, so we're just going to have to do it without the dumbbells. You want to think about keeping your dumbbells around your legs so that you're not banging them together, but they're not too far back to the point where you're like this. You want to focus on just keeping them nice and onto your legs. The little parts that you hold the handles, so the handle parts can be around your legs, and that will allow for you to just feel a little bit more stable. Core nice and tight, same position as what Magda's done with her planks, so that everything can stay nice and neutral. And then you want to just simply think about keeping that nice and still. And the only thing driving the movement wants to be your hip. So your hips back and up, and then all the way through. People often get a lot of just back going, and they think that they're doing a lot of work through their glutes because they're keeping everything hunched and rounded over, where in actual fact they're doing the complete opposite. So imagine someone has a piece of string on your bum like a puppet, and they're simply just driving that up, and then they've got a piece of string on the front of you to drive it through. That's the only thing that should be driving the movement on an RDL. Why do you do it without the band?
No, for the actual working weight.
So how do you know what your working weight is going to be if you're doing it without the band?
So I thought if I do it without the band, and if it's relatively easy, band's going to make it easier, harder.
Harder, okay.
Does that work? Or would you always warm up?
I'd always warm up with the band. I don't find that it makes it that much harder, especially the red band. If it was a really big band, yeah, but I feel like it's only that last little portion. Do you use a thick one usually?
Yeah, I use a thicker one.
Okay, I'd still use the band.
Sorry?
I'd still use the band. I know it's a nightmare to take the dumbbells over. I can hold it if you want. I can hold it around your hips. I would always make sure that there's no slack on it ever. So as far as you need to, yeah. No, sorry, buddy. Slack would be that.
Yeah, but I'm saying so even in the stretch,
yeah,
you still want to.
Nice. Much better with not letting your knees roll out. Let's go. Imagine someone's picking your bum up at the same time. Up, 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 up. Perfect. Almost think like a seesaw. That's better. Good. Really leading with them hips. Let's go. Drive. Nice. Much more aggression. Let's go. Nice. Let's go. Aggressive. All the way. Good. Leave it there. That was a nice last rep. We see a common mistake with RDLs in people really limit their hip mobility. That's why they end up using their chest to come up and down, because their the first thing that they do when they start to move is they drive their knees out. As soon as you drive your knees out, the way in which you can drive your hips back is way less. And I'm not saying that they're bending it out like a squat or anything like that, but they just go like this. Whereas you want to try and think almost a little bit of a rotation inwards. Not that you will rotate inwards, but you'll keep them neutral, your knees, your shins, your legs, and then you can simply just think hips backing up, hips forwards and through. If you initiate by driving the knees out, it limits that. Let's go. Good. Keep weighting your toes as well with your heels. Good, much more stable. Nice. Good. That's better. Keep them just like that. Pause. Drive. Good, that's better. Much more aggression. Let's go, come on. Drive. Squeeze. Let's go. Squeeze. Nice. Let's go. Squeeze. And again, let's go. Nice, let's go. Come on. Try. Perfect. Nice. Really good play. flick. Perfect. Nice and vertical with your shin.
Watch the sun now. I didn't compete, but it's done now. I just need a drink and a rub down. When my team's in the place, it's shut down. I'm a brand on a wave to the sundown. Painting looking like a touchdown. I went up, then my kettle got bust down. Yo, it's the hype man set. AJ Tracy live and direct.
All the way from this leg, don't let that kick.
Microphone champions live and direct. And again, it's the hype man
Drag.
set. AJ Tracy live and direct.
All the way down.
DJ mash up, the deck. The microphone champions live and direct.
Drive. If you try and keep a little scrunch with your toes, so that you remind yourself of, the way distribution is there, it does help. I just know that your toes are a little bit funny anyway.
That's the thing, my toes are naturally.
No, I know.
So that's why I kind of, you can see me doing that, but I'm kind of trying to push down with them.
Maybe try and think for you then, ball of your feet. Rather than toes, try and think ball of your feet. I find if I transition a lot of my weight onto my heel, rather than keeping it into the whole of my foot, that's when my back leg starts kicking, because it's almost like the stability is lost. You're then trying to fight with the back leg to keep yourself over your hips, and then you end up. I use the little block here, yes, so that when I'm in the stretch, there's less stretch into the glute that's not glute, into the hip that's not working, which is a not nice feeling to have. I also use it as a little marker as to where I'm going to have my foot each time. I'll always have the back part of my box where the heel of my foot will be, and that will always align perfectly for being able to keep my shin travelling in whatever direction I want it to. If I was to do a split squat that was quad focused or whole leg focused, we'd want to see a lot of knee travelling over the toe. We'd call that knee flexion. Because we're doing a glute focused split squat, we don't want the shin to drive forward. So you need to create for whatever distance by trialing it, whatever distance that your foot needs to be from the bench to the floor, for you to be able to essentially just sit up and down without the shin breaking half parallel. So the shin needs to stay nice and vertical. So knee all the way to the ground, nice and straight. Because Magda doesn't have the biggest amount of density, a lot of range is not going to be a negative thing for her to be able to really sink into it and keep a lot of work into the whole of her leg. Because my focus is to keep a lot more tension into my glutes, so I have quite big quads, I always just take my knee to 90, pause, and then drive up. You'll get to that point where you don't need to create density everywhere and you can be a little bit more specific, but you have to get there first as well. One little thing that you'll see Magda do when she comes down to be able to create both stability and more stretch into her glute is she twists her hips slightly towards her working side. It creates more stretch into the glute working, and it allows you to be able to create that more stability factor when it comes to getting to the bottom, pausing, and then being aggressive, rather than getting there and being really floppy. Again, just like any other lift, the movement that she did at the start with her plank holds will really help her at the bottom of this lift if she can get that positioning, that feeling with her core. She can keep the positioning at the bottom perfect, range of motion perfect, and drive up perfect as well. Last exercise is the glute focus leg press. Yes, you will use your quads. Yes, you will use a little bit of adductor. So I'm not saying that it's a isolated, just complete glute movement. However, with your foot placement and the range of motion that you can have, you can make it more glute focused. That comes for a lot of lifts, like an RDL, you are going to use a lot of adductor, you are going to use erector. On the leg press, you are going to use quad, you are going to use adductors. On a split squat, you are going to use quad, you are going to use adductors. I think when a bikini girl gets to right at the top of the game, so Olympia qualifications, especially those that have quite a bit of density, their training probably gets a little bit boring at that point because there's very limited exercises that they can do. Yes, they can do a few different variations of it, like I showed that there's different variations of this, the glute kickback, etc., that they can do, abductors, hip thrusts, etc., but their sessions become very pump style. They do become very limited in terms of exercise selection, and some people love that, and they love the fact that they can progress on stage. They often can compete a little bit more frequently because they can tend to hold that physique very well all round, because the amount of progress that they need to make, or It's just easier to be able to maintain at that point. So if you're not at that point and you are a new starter or you're a girl that's not really got any density, you can afford to get away with lifts like this. Like Magda's not got a lot of density, so for her, movements like this, or even for me who's trying to create that density within my glutes and within my physique all round, movements like this are great. So a glute focused leg press is definitely a king lift. Even if you're a guy and you have shit glutes, like these lifts could really help you improve the area of weakness. A heavy hip hinge like an RDL, a hip thrust, a leg press, not even just glute focus, but all round, because you will hit a good bit of glute. Even your squats, like there's so much that you can do to focus on having some great glutes, because if you have a shit pair of glutes on stage, they're not going to get lean. You're not going to have striated glutes, which is a big part. All your body needs to be lean, all your body needs to be developed. So if you are a guy and you have terrible glutes, put some of these lifts into your program and you'll actually potentially have a well-rounded physique rather than just everything but a pair of glutes. And for most, a pair of glutes. Do you know, I actually find that the majority of men, they do struggle with their back development, their hamstring development, their glute development. Like, if they actually put a little bit of work into the things that, you know, we do as females, I'm not saying that males and females are better, but a little bit more focus on that rather than just, you know, the big massive shoulders and the big massive arms, there'd be more complete physiques. So don't be afraid to do your hamstring work, your curls, get strong with it, have them as a focus point. Same when it comes to your glute movements. Incorporate some of that into your actual training. Don't be afraid of just not doing the ego stuff and doing some of the fluffier bits if needed, to make sure that you can actually develop a physique that's well-rounded. So, glute focused leg press. What? What Meg said. Glute leg press. Feet are at hip width or just on the outside of hip width. For me, it's definitely hip width. Core tight, head to bum, nice and neutral. No lifting back. As soon as you arch your upper neck, your lower back will arch, so keeping it in. Core nice and tight. The range of motion will be 90 degrees max. Pause, drive up. I find for me personally, and it's probably just a mental thing, that if I get to the bottom and actually pause in the stretch, my glutes fight better. Definitely a mental thing, definitely not a scientific bro term there, but I find that like nice little bit of stretch and pause and hold there where it's really hard really helps my glutes fire a little bit better. But yeah, range of motion is obviously very different to quads. Positioning with my feet is obviously very different. So if you're trying to bias your glutes, focus on your glutes. That's what bias means. Your foot positioning needs to be different. Your range of motion needs to be different. Then you'll get some massive glutes. That is the end of the session for Magda, not for me. It feels funny. Coach Meg's hat on rather than training Meg hat on. Hopefully you can take some things away from it. Often people think, you know, the breakdown of training is trying to take it a little bit too extreme or intense. But if you're a bodybuilder and you want to be great, if you can focus on your training being amazing, form, but also the intensity, the way in which you can get strong, like the amount of progress that you'll make from training alone, alongside obviously keeping your nutrition great and recovery, etc. It's just endless. So try not to see it as going too deep, too intricate, etc. I mean, it's training. There is biomechanics that comes into part of it. There's science things that come into the back of it. Just because it's bodybuilding doesn't mean that it's exempt from those types of things. So it's not trying to take things too extreme. It's about trying to get a lot out of something rather than using other things to try and compensate. So take your training seriously, do it well, use serious intensity, don't be a wet wipe, don't leave anything on the gym floor, and your physique will thank you for it, regardless of whether you are a bikini competitor all the way up to being a men's open bodybuilder. Training is king, and if you can capitalise on that, the amount of progress that you'll make and continue to make, regardless of what level or part of your journey you're at, will be endless. So make sure that you get to it. Like all that fun stuff, and we'll be back again soon.